So we're going to have a class discussion a little bit today. And if you want, you guys like to write at all? Does that help you think, journaling by writing, or do you just like to just quietly think to yourself? Depends. Okay. Well, I'll give you the option then. If you want to write this out, take a moment. I'll just let you think about it for a second. But answer this question to yourself, and then we'll talk about it. If you made a huge mistake here at school that got out to the public, to school, to the general student body, and this mistake was extremely embarrassing, how would you respond to everybody knowing about it? Would you put on a face like you don't care? Or would you try to hide? How would you respond? Emotionally and your actions. So if you want to think about it and write it out, you can. Then you can read it, or you could just take a moment, think about it. Ask questions too, like, well, what kind of mistake, things like that, if you have any questions. It may not be something morally wrong, necessarily, but something embarrassing. Okay, if you're not already, did you write down how it would be different if what you did was morally wrong? Okay, great. So let's start with you, Andrew. What did you say? How would you respond for something extremely embarrassing like that?
Is the first part?
Yeah, first part. You guys can take your masks off too. We're separate enough if you want, if that helps.
Well, yeah, honestly, I don't honestly feel embarrassed.
Uh-huh.
But I feel like, depending on how embarrassing it was, I'd be able to get over it, per se, like maybe after a week or a couple of days.
What would you do to get over it?
What would I do? Well, I would go to friends or teachers for comfort, people I can trust, and just express to them how I feel about the whole situation.
Mm-hmm. What exactly would be embarrassing? Would it be the action or the people's response?
I think more so the action.
The action?
Yeah.
Okay. What action were you thinking of as you're thinking about this? What's an example of something?
Like maybe playing a basketball game and shoot the winning basket, but on the other person's, but on the wrong basket.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would be bad.
Or doing a technical foul, right when it's tied.
At a crucial moment, right?
Yeah, a crucial moment.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah. Good. Any other thoughts on the first part?
I think I would also feel timid around people as well, like during that period where I'm just embarrassed and just trying to find a way to live about it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Okay. Do you know anybody who would respond brashly, where they'd be like, "I'm just gonna own it"? Anyone like that?
Do I know anyone? No one comes to mind initially.
Okay, that's fine. Cool. All right. What about you, QB?
I think I would try not to meet anyone at the school so that they won't think about the action that I did, which was really embarrassing. And after that, about a week, I'm probably gonna pretend like I don't care about it.
Okay, so it would be initially hide, let me not deal with facing people who know me.
Rather than to forget about that.
Okay, then come back and maybe for a day they'd be like, "Oh, remember?"
Yeah.
And you'd be like, "Yeah," and just distract.
Yeah, and just make fun of some memory that they
Yeah.
can think of. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would and what about for you? Would the action be more embarrassing, or the fact that everybody is talking about it be more embarrassing?
I think that everybody
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. So, Andrew, what about you? If the thing that you did was some kind of moral sin issue that this culture thinks is bad, right? Like there are some sin issues that this culture, even at Hanalani, people just don't make a big deal about. But something that the school thinks would be embarrassing. How would you respond differently?
How I respond differently? Well, how I respond differently is I wouldn't just feel embarrassed. Like I would actually feel like grieved, maybe even grieved about what I did. And
Okay.
I would feel very frustrated and angry at myself.
Hmm.
So that's how I would feel differently. And how I would react is well, depending on what I did, I'd try to find a way to like make it right and discuss how I can make it right with teachers and my parents and
Mm-hmm.
go to God about it. Ask Him for forgiveness, repent,
Mm-hmm.
and find comfort in His grace.
Okay.
And after that, once I've done everything I needed to do, just move on from it and don't do it again.
Yeah. Okay. And when you say grieve from it, what do you mean by that? Where does that emotion come from?
It comes from a place of like, man, like I ended up hurting God or hurting someone else. I'm not, like, this is not who I'm supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a child. I'm not silver perfect, but I'm not supposed to be behaving this way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where grief comes from, just the fact that I ended up hurting God or someone else.
Okay. So by grief, you mean...
Maybe I'm using the word incorrectly.
No, it's okay. I'm trying to get very specific. Because this book is going to be... I want you guys to try to relate to it. You may not have done anything like what she does in this book. And you might not know what she's done yet. I don't think you do. Do you?
I have an idea.
Okay. No? Okay, so we'll get to it. It comes very early, so it's not like a big secret. But I still want you to come up to it in the book. But you might not have done anything of the level that she did. But I want you to relate to what she deals with as much as you can. Okay? So this book, I think, is you're going to find it's relatable. Not because, oh man, yeah, we deal as teenagers at Hanalani with that same sin issue every day. That's not quite it. It's the social aspect and the problems that you face because of whatever issue you have that we have to deal with. The culture and the Pharisaism and the legalism and community shaming, those issues are what we deal with, even if it's on a lesser degree. So I want you to really think deeply about those topics, and then you'll see it in a fuller color as we read the story. Okay. Okay, good. So how would you respond if it was something that you did that was wrong? Not just like an accident, but like according to like morals and right and wrong, this is something that you should not do. And you did that, and it was a secret, and now the whole school knows about it.
I think I wouldn't feel embarrassing. I probably would feel like guilty more.
Okay.
Because if it's a sin, like a wrong thing, so I would apologize to everyone that what I did wrong about, and I probably would come to school and meet teachers or friends, whoever. I would feel really guilty about it. And
How would you handle your guilt? And is guilt the same thing as what you meant by grief? Or is grief partly guilt and part something else?
I'd say grief. I wouldn't say guilt. I wouldn't say guilt is what I mean by grief. When I mean grief, it's like I feel sorrowful about what I did.
Okay.
Like in a healthy way, where it moves me to do something about it.
So when I say guilt or guilty, you feel, what do you think that means?
Oh, like I feel like when you say guilt, it's like you're condemning yourself or you're down on yourself. Like you're knocked down and you're staying down.
Okay. Those are the emotions you associate with guilt.
Yes.
Okay, so you said you would feel guilty.
Yeah.
How, just define guilt. What do you mean by guilt?
Regret that what I did,
Okay.
and also be really depressed about what I did.
Mm-hmm.
That feeling. Like,
Depressed. Mm-hmm. Okay. So in that sense, sorrowful. You feel very regret. You wish you didn't do it. You feel ashamed. Is that a word you guys would use? Would you both use ashamed? I feel ashamed for what I did. Okay. What do you think ashamed means? What does that word mean? See, all of these words, like already, you guys have different ideas of what guilt means, right? So defining what exactly we mean is so important, because as you read this book, there's going to be words that you don't know first. Like even I came across one as in that reading time that I didn't remember, or I was like, oh, that's a new word. And I had read it before, but yeah, on page 47, right at the top, so you didn't quite get there. It was the grim rigidity that petrified the bearded physiognomies. Like, that's quite a word. So you're going to face words that you don't know. Partly because he's writing this book in the 1800s, like mid-1800s. Partly because he's not only writing it in the mid-1800s, but he's writing this book about a time that's 200 years before him, in the 1600s, okay? So he's writing it 200 years ago, about a time 200 years before that. So the language is just all over the place, you know? And then also, he's not only trying to use words from that time, he writes in a way that is almost like the King James Bible. It's very oldie style. It's called Jacobean language, is what it's called. And he's trying to do that on purpose. And then this is the maybe fourth reason. Fourth reason is that the type of literature this book is called romantic literature. Romantic literature, character of romantic literature, is very flowery language. So very descriptive. So lots of big vocabulary words that he's pulling to be very specific with what he's trying to describe. So what that means is that as we discuss it, we also need to be very specific in knowing what each other means about things. Which is why I'm really interested to see what you mean by things like grief and guilt. And so when I say ashamed, what does that mean to you, to be ashamed of something? And what does it not mean?
I had something, but I'm sure it'll come back.
Either one can go first.
I think like the feeling when my face got blushed,
Okay.
like really.
So blushing.
Yeah, like that.
Is being ashamed and embarrassed different to you?
I think ashamed is like closer to humiliated
Okay.
for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ashamed. I would, for me, when I think of ashamed, I think of basically not feeling proud, but the opposite of proud, which you've done.
Opposite of proud, not in the sense of I am prideful, but proud of, like, I can be proud of something I did.
Like, when I say something you're not proud of, like, isn't something you would find it easy to tell other people about.
Okay.
So it makes, when I think of ashamed, I think of when we feel ashamed about something, it makes you feel uneasy, or in more modern terms, it makes you cringe.
Okay. So the way I see it, and I don't know if this is entirely correct, but it's just distinguishing the words in my own mind. Embarrassed is that feeling of, oh, I wish people didn't know about it. Or at least in the moment, you wish people didn't know about it. You might laugh about it later, right? That's embarrassed. And you can be embarrassed about something that's wrong, but generally you don't laugh about it later, right? Ashamed, I feel like people don't have to know about it for me to be ashamed of something. But embarrassed, I'm not really embarrassed about something people don't know about. You know what I mean? So if I did something that was embarrassing, it's only embarrassing because people know about it. But if I do something that I'm ashamed of, that's because God knows about it. And at that point, in my mind, if I'm ashamed of something, it's because it was a sin issue, not because I just don't want people to know about it. Does that make sense? So that's kind of how I see those words. Guilty, we so often think of guilty as a feeling, but ashamed, embarrassed, those are feelings. Guilty is actually a stance, a legal term, right? You are guilty. If you do something, it doesn't matter how you feel. You don't even have to be sorry for it. You are guilty because you did it, right? You don't even have to feel guilty. You could be proud of murdering someone and you're still guilty, right? So guilt is not a feeling, it's a condition according to a standard, which in this case is God's law, God's standard. So, because we're talking about sin, right, at this point now. So guilt is a standard. We just kind of use it as a feeling. I feel like how I feel when I am guilty of something. I feel a certain way, but that's not always true of everyone. So, guilt, ashamed, embarrassed, sin versus something that's simply embarrassing. There's distinctions there that we need to make as we read the story. So, what Hester, that's the character on the front of the book, her name is Hester, what she's done is something that is morally wrong. How should the community respond? So let's talk about that now. Now that you've done something, let's say what you did was morally wrong. Did you guys have an example of something in your mind? When I said, okay, at this point now it's something morally wrong. Is there something that you had in mind, an example? What is something that if you found out, like, some Joe Schmo in the school, somebody in the school, I don't know nobody in particular, that person got expelled because they did blank. What is something that the school and everyone would be like, oh, we don't really want to talk about that. That's serious. He got expelled. What is something that would expel someone like that? What's serious enough to expel someone? Serious to you as high schoolers. Obviously, I'm an adult. I can think of plenty of things. But in your mind as a high schooler, what is something that's like, that's serious to us? That hits home. I wish that person didn't do that. That's embarrassing even to me to talk about. That kind of feeling.
Like stealing something.
Okay. So stealing something?
Not at once, to continuously keep
Okay.
stealing something and pretend like didn't do it.
Mm-hmm. And he's caught. And he's still, no, I didn't do it. But he's prideful. Have you ever had anything stolen from you?
Yes.
It's a very violating feeling. It's like someone just stepped into my bubble and that should never have been there. It's the worst feeling. I mean, I'm sure that there are worse feelings, but it's a horrible feeling. Yeah. Good one.
The first thing that came to my mind is like someone like doing weed or cocaine or something like that, doing drugs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And being caught doing it, or maybe even like smuggling or sharing it with other people.
Yeah. Oh, it's not just one person. It's that person was selling it to other students, and they're all expelled. Yeah, it's bad that they're smoking, but that person brought it on campus and made money off of my friends. Yeah. Okay, good. All right. What she did was something morally wrong, and the community thought it was so horrible. And what I want you to notice is how the community responds. Okay, so as we read, look for what she did and how different people respond differently. Different emotions that you feel. Let's just list some emotions, and let's say it's personal now. Okay, so somebody did something in your class, in your grade. Are you guys in the same grade?
No.
Senior and junior?
I'm junior.
You're a senior, right, Andrew?
Yes.
Okay. So let's say somebody in your grade or in the junior senior class did something and it was personal. Stole something from you. Like, you know it was them, but you don't have proof. Okay, something like that. They stole something really, not just a computer, but something sentimental. Like, let's say your family doesn't have a lot of money, and they're already working hard to put you into school, and they could barely afford, but they did. They gave you a new MacBook for Christmas, and it was like, this is special. January 3rd, we come back to school, and somebody steals that. Right, something super personal like that. That computer meant a lot to you because your family sacrificed, and they took it from you, right? What are the emotions that you feel? So we've listed some emotions already. We've got ashamed, we've got embarrassed, maybe guilty. You could maybe put there. What are some other emotions that you feel now that you're part of the one offended?
Definitely anger.
Anger. I said violated. I feel very violated when someone steals something.
Sad.
Yeah, you feel sad at a loss. Like, I can't. You're helpless. Yeah. Okay. Good. What about if it wasn't you they stole it from, but your friend?
Oh, man.
What emotions do you feel then?
Still anger.
Anger.
But,
Is it different? Is the anger different?
oh yeah, it's different because it's not. I don't feel angry for me. I feel angry for my buddy.
Yeah.
Like he's the one that got violated, and
Yeah.
because I care for his well-being, like for him, for something gets stolen from him, like that makes me angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so the reason and the motivation is different.
Mm-hmm. So now it's a vindictive feel. I want to. It's not a helplessness like I'm stuck. It's more like it's just so much more sympathy and empathetic. It doesn't quite feel as violating to you, but you care.
Right.
Yeah. What about you? Any other words you would use to describe that?
I still feel sad and sorry about it.
Mm-hmm.
My friend also feel anger.
Anger. Okay. Now, what if it wasn't one of your friends, but somebody that you don't really know very well? Does it change again?
I'm trying to think like an example. Trying to play it out in my head.
Yeah.
Being honest, I probably wouldn't feel as upset about it, but in my mind, I would think that that's wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you're not going to be quite as angered by it.
Right.
Yeah. What happens if you feel like somebody is angry about it, but they don't have an attachment to it? Do you feel like, what do you think of someone like that? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like now, it didn't affect you, and it didn't affect Joe, but Joe is angry about it. What do you think of someone like that?
I can understand
Uh-huh.
what he or she's feeling about, but I wouldn't. I cannot emphasize that feeling. Is it right word to?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can understand why he's angry or sad about the situation, which didn't affect him or her, but I cannot emphasize what.
You can't empathize with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Empathize, not emphasize. Yeah. Very close. But emphasize is like, I need to make sure someone knows.
Oh,
Empathize is like, I feel bad.
okay, so
Yeah.
empathize.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, so let's turn our attention to the screen. I've got a few minutes to make it through an introductory thing on Nathaniel Hawthorne. So I want to talk about him. He's the author of the book. And what we've done is we've talked about the themes in the book. You're going to find some of these themes in the story. And so I want you to keep an eye out for them. But let's get some background now. Nathaniel Hawthorne is the author. We've talked about that. The Scarlet Letter was written in 1850. You should take notes on these things, by the way. Okay. And then since I'm recording it, I'll give it to everyone to look at later if you want. The Scarlet Letter was written in 1850, and it's very relevant. The three main characters are Hester, Dimmesdale, and Chillingworth. Okay? Chillingworth is something like the villain. The Dimmesdale and Hester are the two main... Well, they're all three main characters. So let's get some details about Nathaniel Hawthorne's life, though. Nathaniel Hawthorne is born in Salem, Massachusetts, and his father dies in 1808. So 1804 he's born. 1808, 4 years old, his dad dies. 1825, now he's 21 years old, okay? And he graduates from Bowdoin College in Maine. I'm going to move kind of fast because, again, you can look at this later. So get the notes you want and you can use, and then you can always come back to it. And if you have any questions, feel free to stop me, but I've got 7 minutes. So, 1825, he returns to Salem, Massachusetts, where he grew up, to write short stories, and his first one in 1837 is called Twice Told Tales. Those are short stories. 1839, he works in the Boston Custom House, and if you're interested in knowing more about that, you can read the introduction to the Scarlet Letter, which we're skipping for the class, but you're welcome to read that if you want. He married a girl named Sophia Peabody, and in 1950, he published the Scarlet Letter, which was his first famous writing. The other ones became famous after, but the Scarlet Letter was his first one. 1830 to 1865 is the time zone for what we're calling American Romanticism, and we're going to get into that. But you should understand those terms and these names of people, all of which, except Herman Melville, we're going to look at. So Ralph Waldo Emerson was a leader he's the one that wrote the manifest for what Romanticism is, for American Romanticism. So he's kind of like a literary leader of American Romanticism. Henry David Thoreau was a big follower of Emerson. They were in a group together. Herman Melville was a huge fan of Nathaniel Hawthorne, which is our author. Harriet Beecher Stowe wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin. She was very much a romantic. Edgar Allan Poe, which you guys should all know the name of, and Walt Whitman, who's a poet. We're going to look at all of these people except Herman Melville. Herman Melville is the one that wrote Moby Dick, by the way. And you should know that. He wrote Moby Dick. Okay, a novel is presumed to aim at a very minute fidelity, not merely to the possible, but to the probable and ordinary course of man's experience. Hawthorne said that in the introduction to a different book, which we're not reading. What that means is that a novel is trying to tell you what is the most probable thing that happens, right? It's aiming at the probable and ordinary course of man's experience. And that is what a novel does, according to Hawthorne, but not a romantic. So there's a difference between a romantic or a romance novel. A romance is not, these have ushy-gushy romantic feelings and it's a love-dovey story. That's not romance novel. If it's just a novel, it's not to the possible, but to the probable in life. Okay? A romance, on the other hand, and that's what we're reading. We're not reading a novel. We're reading a romance. So how is a novel different from a romance? Well, a novel is a work of art. It must rigidly subject itself to laws, and while it sins unpardonably so far as it may swerve aside from the truth of the human heart, a novel has fairly a right to present that truth under circumstances, to a great extent, of the writer's own creation. In other words, a novel sticks to what probably and most likely happens in the ordinary course of human events. A romance gives the author freedom to portray events in maybe you could say superstitious manner, in what is unlikely to happen, but for a purpose, and a very specific purpose. The purpose is right here. It cannot swerve aside from telling about the truth of the human heart. So, a romance must try to get at what the human heart deals with. And it may do that in extraordinary flamboyant language and extreme circumstances that are unlikely